My name is Nathan Cross. I'm 48 years old. And on a cold Thursday in November, I found out my 18-year marriage was over through a phone call. I was sitting at the kitchen table in our Portland home reviewing a client's investment portfolio when my phone lit up with a call from Alyssa, my wife. She was supposed to be at a pharmaceutical sales conference in San Diego. Her voice was composed, practiced. "Nate," she said, "I need to tell you something." I already knew, or at least part of me did. "I'm not coming home," she said, then paused like she was expecting me to interrupt. I didn't. "I've met someone. It's been going on for a while." Her words were polished, like she'd rehearsed them. Maybe she had. "It's Trent," she added, "my regional director." I stared at the dark wood grain of the table. Let her speak. "He understands me. He sees my potential." Then she twisted the knife. "I've already emptied our shared investment account." My breath caught, but I didn't react, not externally. "My lawyer said it was the smart move," she added quickly. "We both know you won't fight dirty." She was right, and wrong. "I understand," I said quietly. "That's it, you understand." Her voice cracked slightly, the first real emotion I'd heard. "Take care, Alyssa." And I hung up. I opened my laptop and logged into the financial dashboard. The account we'd been growing together for 12 years. Vacations, furniture, future plans. She had initiated a transfer 3 and 15,000. But I wasn't panicking, because the transfer was pending. My approval was required for anything over $10,000, a dual authentication feature I'd quietly requested 6 months ago. And that was only the beginning. 3 months earlier, I'd noticed the signs. Conferences that didn't appear on her signer company calendar. Dinner receipts in downtown Portland on nights she said she was in Eugene. Late-night calls from Trent just following up on territory reports. But I didn't accuse. I didn't argue. I did what I'd always done. I analyzed. I adjusted. I prepared. I created a new joint account with a modest balance, just enough to keep appearances normal. Meanwhile, I moved $115 million, our real assets, into a separate trust under my name alone, signed by Alyssa, approved by her. She never asked questions, too busy texting under the dinner table. The system was working, exactly as I'd built it. I met Alyssa 20 years ago at a finance conference in Chicago. She worked in pharmaceutical sales, lively, confident, magnetic. I was the opposite, analytical, reserved. She liked that I listened. I liked that she lived out loud. We married 2 years later, made a life built on spreadsheets and synchronized calendars. We had goals: buy a house, take a trip every year, try for kids by year 5. But the kids never came. After tests and tense silences, a specialist confirmed it. My low sperm count made natural conception unlikely. Alyssa cried in the car. I held her hand. "I'll explore every option with you," I said. And I meant it. But she never brought it up again. Instead, she threw herself into her career. Work consumed both of us. Separate trips became normal. Texts replaced conversations. Intimacy faded into habit. Then Trent Marlowe showed up. Alyssa's new boss. Charismatic, always valuing her input, encouraging her to aim higher. I noticed her behavior change. Phone face down. Passwords on everything. New clothes. A second phone, she said, was for client calls. The signs were obvious. But I stayed quiet. Instead, I tracked all hotel receipts, gas mileage that didn't match her travel reports, charges in cities Trent happened to be visiting. I wasn't collecting evidence out of spite. I was collecting certainty. The morning after her call, I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, looked at the blinking transfer request. 315,000. I didn't deny it. I didn't approve it either. I just left it where it was frozen. Then I opened the drawer beside me. Inside was a folder I'd prepared 2 months ago. Financial statements. Signed documents. Legal papers. A complete restructuring of our assets. Alyssa thought she emptied our future. She didn't realize I'd already moved it. The doorbell rang. It was Erica, Alyssa's friend from Corvera Biolabs. Tense, uncomfortable. She asked me to come by, pick up some of her things. I let her in, Poured coffee we wouldn't drink. She's not coming back, Erica said softly. I know. She also wanted me to check if her transfer went through. Of course she did. I opened my laptop, turned the screen toward her. Pending approval. Erica's shoulders slumped. She'll be furious. That's her choice. After she left with a suitcase of designer clothes, I drove to Halston and Finch, my office. But the day felt off, like my job no longer fit the man I was becoming. At lunch, I walked to the bank and triggered Phase 2. By 3:00 p.m., I had 7 missed calls from Alyssa. None were returned. Instead, I walked into Graham Ellis's law office. My lawyer, my old friend. He reviewed the file. She thought she outplayed you, he said, shaking his head. She didn't realize she'd stepped onto a chessboard you designed. We'll file tomorrow, I said. Financial misconduct. Marital abandonment. He nodded. This isn't about revenge, Graham. It's about restoring balance. 4 days passed. 4 days of silence from me, and a storm of messages from Alyssa. The call started polite. Can we talk? Just want to clarify some things. Then came the texts. You're being unfair. This isn't you, Nathan. We built that account together. Then came the threats. You'll regret this. My lawyer says you can't do this. I'm entitled to half of everything. I didn't respond to any of them. And then, on the 5th day, she showed up. I got home around 6. The house was quiet until I saw her standing in the living room. She still had her key. Of course. Nathan, she said, setting down her purse like it was still her home. We need to talk. I placed my briefcase on the table, took off my coat. You emptied the joint account, I said plainly. Or tried to. That account is as much mine as it is yours, she said. You had no right to block it. It required dual authentication, I said. You agreed to that. It's in our banking agreement. She narrowed her eyes. You manipulated the system. No, I replied. I protected our assets. You made your move. And now I'm making mine. She walked closer, voice softening. I was emotional, Nathan. I didn't mean to leave like that. I panicked. No, I said you planned. For months. You booked hotel rooms. You changed your passwords. You lied. Her tone sharpened. I was unhappy. You never noticed. I noticed. I just didn't want to believe. She turned away, then faced me again. You can't just lock me out of everything. I looked at her, really looked at her. She was still wearing the watch I gave her for our anniversary. The one she used to say reminded her of stability. Now it just looked borrowed. I'm not locking you out, I said quietly. I'm ending something that already ended. I just hadn't signed the papers yet. That night, I changed the locks. The next morning, I called the bank and ensured every point of access was secured. Later that day, I met with Graham again. She's unraveling, I said. The mask is cracking. Good, he said. Let her show her real face in court. She won't go quietly, I warned. Graham didn't blink. She doesn't have to. She just has to lose. 2 days later, a letter from her attorney landed on my desk. The letterhead belonged to Silver, Ross & Hayes, a downtown firm known for aggressive tactics. The letter accused me of financial manipulation, emotional coercion, and, most interestingly, intent to restrict rightful access to marital property. I scanned to the bottom. Trent Marlowe was CC'd. So he wasn't just her lover, he was part of the legal strategy. Now it was getting interesting. Graham filed an amended petition the next day. Attempted misappropriation of joint assets, breach of fiduciary trust, and a motion for a temporary restraining order to keep Alyssa from re-entering the home. She thinks you're the safe one, he said as we left court. That's good. Let her keep thinking that. The next move came 2 weeks later. A text from an unknown number. Coffee, 2 p.m., Arbor and Pine Cafe. Important info about Alyssa. I hesitated, but curiosity won. At 2:10 p.m., I sat alone at a corner table until a woman walked in wearing a dark navy suit. Sharp eyes. Confident gait. I recognized her from old company dinners. Camilla Rivera, Director of HR at Corvera Biolabs. She didn't order anything. She just sat down and placed a USB drive on the table. This conversation never happened, she said. What's on it? I asked. Emails. Between Alyssa and Trent, 14 months worth. I kept my face still. Why now, I asked. Camilla exhaled. Trent's done this before. 3 times that I know of. Married women under his supervision. Same pattern. Promises pressure promotions. Then he discards them. And Corvera allowed that, I asked. She hesitated. His uncle sits on the board. But this time she added he crossed a line. Those emails contain confidential project data sent from Alyssa's account to Trent's personal email. Outside work hours. The implication hit hard. He's selling proprietary info, I said. Camilla nodded. The FBI's looking into it. Quietly. I thought you should know. Then she stood and left. I didn't touch the coffee. I just stared at the USB. At home, I opened the files. There it was. Dozens of forwarded reports, late-night exchanges, flirting laced with data leaks, product details, distribution timelines. One message caught my attention. Trent, once you're free from the accountant, will move forward. Miami director title. The works. Alyssa. What about Nathan's financial expertise might be useful? Trent, we don't need him. Just get the money. They weren't just leaving me. They were trying to extract every ounce of value first. I copied the files, drove straight to Graham's office. He read in silence, then looked at me. This changes everything. Later that night, I stared out the window as the city lights flickered. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt clear. This wasn't just a marriage ending. It was a war of intentions. And I had the higher ground. Some betrayals scream, others whisper. This one. It clicked like a lock turning. I left Graham's office with a folder full of evidence emails, timestamps, data leaks, promises exchanged like currency between Alyssa and Trent. They'd planned everything. Except for me. They thought I was too quiet to fight back, too measured, too forgiving. But I'd built my life on structure, not submission. The next morning, Graham drafted our counter-proposal. Alyssa would receive no claim to the trust, no alimony, a one-time settlement of $75,000, a signed non-disclosure agreement. In return, I would not forward the contents of the USB drive to Corvera's board or the authorities. We attached a single sample email, enough to prove we had it, not enough to show our full hand. By afternoon, her lawyer responded with urgency. We need to meet in person. 3 days later, I sat in Graham's conference room, early, prepared. Alyssa entered with her attorney Carlton Hayes, silver-haired, confident, all the predictable charm of a high-end litigator. Alyssa looked different, tired, faded, but still clinging to control. Hayes began smoothly. We're here in good faith, but your proposal is lopsided. Graham slid the folder across the table. Then you haven't read the attachments. Hayes opened it, scanned the email. His lips tightened. This is private correspondence. This, Graham said calmly, is evidence of corporate misconduct, financial conspiracy, and potential federal violations. Hayes turned to Alyssa, whispered something. She shook her head once. Then her eyes met mine. You're blackmailing me, she said. No, I replied. I'm giving you a way out. She looked away. Graham continued. The trust is legally protected. The attempt to drain the account is documented. Your client can accept these terms, or we proceed publicly. Hayes asked for a private consultation. They stepped into the hallway. Graham leaned toward me. You holding up? I nodded. I just want this done. Then we're close, he said. They're folding. 20 minutes later, they returned. Alyssa's expression was unreadable. Hayes looked deflated. We'll accept the terms, he said, with one condition. Graham raised an eyebrow. You do not report any of this to Corvera or any law enforcement agency. I considered her face, the woman I'd once built a future with, the woman who plotted to strip me of it. What she did was unforgivable. But I didn't want vengeance. I wanted closure. Agreed, I said, on one condition of my own. Hayes bristled, which is, she signs everything. Today, no delays, no appeals. Fine, he said. It took 2 hours. Signatures, stamps, quiet silence punctuated by rustling paper. When it was done, she gathered her coat, paused. "Was any of it real for you?" she asked. I didn't hesitate. All of it was real to me. That was the difference. She didn't respond, just walked out. That evening I sat on the porch, watching the sky turn amber above the Portland skyline. Alyssa was gone, legally, financially, personally. But there was still Trent. And Corvera. Our agreement had been clear: no direct reporting. But nothing had been said about indirect communication. The next morning I created a burner email. Attached 5 selected files from the USB, just enough to show the leak, just enough to draw attention. Sent anonymously to Corvera's compliance officer, their CEO, and the full board. Then I deleted the account. Not for revenge, for accountability. 3 days later, the Portland Tribune published a short business brief. Executive resignation at Corvera Biolabs. Trent Marlowe had resigned, effective immediately. No statement, no defense. Camilla sent me a short text later that night. "Quiet justice still counts, thank you." Meanwhile, Alyssa's settlement was processed. The check was issued. Final. No contact. Graham forwarded me a copy of her new employment agreement. She had accepted a sales position at a small distribution firm in Phoenix. Entry level. No bonuses, no boardrooms. Trent unemployed. And rumor had it under investigation. They'd both landed far from Miami. At Halston and Finch, my work changed. Less about portfolios, more about principles. Graham recommended me for a consulting role with Corvera's new compliance team. A quiet vote of confidence from the company that almost let it all burn. I accepted. Some nights I still thought about it. Not with bitterness. With clarity. A year ago, I was planning a second honeymoon. Now I was untangling from someone who never intended to stay. It hurt. But it also healed. Because I didn't lose everything. I reclaimed it. There's a silence that follows a storm. It doesn't roar, it settles low, steady, final. That's what the weeks after the divorce felt like. Alyssa had signed the documents. The settlement was paid. The keys were returned. The house, the trust, my reputation, they were intact. But something inside me had cracked, not broken, not destroyed, just changed. For 18 years, I had built everything around the idea of us. Now I was relearning how to build for just me. I started simple. Donated the furniture she'd picked, repainted the walls she once called too clinical. Put away the photos, all of them. Even the ones from Chicago where it all began. Not out of spite, out of necessity. At Halston and Finch, my presence changed. Colleagues who once saw me as the quiet one now came to me for advice, not just on market trends, but on integrity. One afternoon, my assistant brought me an envelope. Inside was a letter from Corvera's board. They'd reviewed my anonymous tip, acknowledged it was the catalyst for internal restructuring. Then came the unexpected. They offered me a permanent position, head of financial compliance for the entire Pacific Northwest. A role that hadn't existed before, created because of what I'd helped uncover. I didn't answer immediately. I wanted to be sure this next chapter wasn't about proving anything. Not to them, not to Alyssa. It had to be mine. I accepted 2 weeks later. That same week, I received an email from Erica, Alyssa's former friend, the one who had retrieved her clothes. It was brief. Just thought you'd want to know she and Trent are no longer speaking. Apparently, none of his promises came true. No Miami promotion, no title, no job at all. She's struggling, but still too proud to admit it. She asked about you. I didn't say much. Just that you were doing fine. I didn't reply. Some messages are better left unanswered. The house felt lighter now. The rooms once filled with her perfume and passive-aggressive silences now carried the smell of fresh wood and quiet freedom. I replaced our California king with a smaller bed. Rearranged the office into a space I actually liked. I took weekend drives. Read again. Rebuilt my routine. But the biggest change came with someone unexpected. Her name was Rachel Byrne. We met through Corvera's legal department during a cross-functional audit. She was a senior counsel. Corporate law. Sharp as a scalpel. but with a softness behind the eyes that came from living through something real. We worked together for 3 weeks before grabbing coffee. Then lunch. Then dinner. I told her about Alyssa on our third date. The full truth. Not dramatized, not minimized. Just the truth. She listened, asked nothing more than what mattered. That explains the way you pause before answering questions, she said. I smiled. She wasn't comparing me to anyone. She was seeing me. We took things slowly. No big declarations, no lofty promises. Just two people learning to trust in real time. And that was enough. I still thought about Alyssa sometimes. Not with anger or longing. Just as a chapter that taught me what to protect, what to hold back, and when to let go. On a Sunday morning in late spring, I packed up the last of the files from our joint history. The tax returns, the property papers, the vacation itineraries I used to laminate. I placed them in a sealed box and drove them to a storage unit I rarely visit. Then I drove to the coast. Alone, deliberate. Not to escape, but to acknowledge that I no longer needed to. I walked the shoreline as the fog lifted. Let the waves erase my footprints as they came and went. And I stood still, in a life that was mine again. Later that night, I sat with Rachel in the kitchen of her place. Quiet music, open windows, wine glasses only half full. She looked at me across the counter and said, "You're not who I expected." I smiled. Neither are you. We didn't toast, or kiss, or say anything dramatic. We just sat there, at ease. That kind of peace doesn't need a performance. 1 year later. That's how long it took for the dust to settle and for the man in the mirror to look like someone I actually knew again. Not the version of me who turned a blind eye to betrayal. Not the quiet husband in the background of someone else's ambitions. But a man who had chosen himself, who had walked away with his dignity intact even when everything else seemed designed to take it. The divorce was final, the legal mess behind me. The house had been sold, the trust untouched, the settlement paid. And now I stood on the deck of my new home, smaller, simpler, in the hills just outside Portland, a place I chose. Every inch of it. No joint opinions, no silent compromises, just clean air and a clear horizon. I still worked with Corvera. The compliance division I helped shape had grown with new hires and sharper policies. Every quarter I gave internal workshops on ethical oversight. Not because I was chasing validation, but because I had learned something most people ignore. Trust isn't just personal, it's operational. And when it breaks, whether in marriage or business, it carries cost. My job now was to help others mitigate that cost, to prevent what I couldn't in my own home. It felt right, like a redemption arc that didn't require applause. Rachel was still in my life. We didn't rush anything, no labels, no long-term promises. We saw each other when it felt real, not out of routine. We took hikes on weekends, shared meals in quiet cafes, talked about everything and nothing. She never tried to fix me. And I didn't ask her to fill spaces that weren't hers to fill. That kind of relationship isn't flashy, but it's honest. And after what I'd lived through, honesty was a rare and precious thing. One day a letter arrived. Handwritten, no return address. I knew the handwriting. Alyssa. It wasn't an apology, it wasn't an attempt to reconnect. It was a single-page note. I thought I was making the smarter move. Trent left 3 months after everything blew up. I lost more than money. I lost my bearings. You didn't just walk away from me, Nathan. You walked back to yourself. I see that now. I hope someday I can do the same. No contact details, just her name. I folded the letter, placed it in the same file box that held our divorce papers. Not out of sentiment, but to remind myself of the cost of miscalculation and the quiet grace of walking away clean. That summer, I started funding a small scholarship program, focused on financial ethics, for students pursuing certification in fiduciary advisory work, estate planning, or forensic accounting. It wasn't grand, but it was personal. A way to turn loss into something lasting, a way to plant something from the ashes. And yes, ironically, it came from the same trust Alyssa once tried to drain. She never knew, she didn't need to. Some wins don't belong on spreadsheets. The media never got hold of what happened with Trent. Corvera settled things quietly. He disappeared from LinkedIn. Industry whispers suggested he'd been barred from executive work for the foreseeable future. As for Alyssa, Erica told me she had started teaching part-time at a community college in Tempe. Introduction to Sales Dynamics. A simpler life than she'd envisioned, but perhaps a more honest one. And maybe that was enough. One night, Rachel and I stood under the stars in my backyard. No music, no talk, just silence. She turned to me and said, "You don't carry it the same way anymore." "The divorce?" I asked. "The weight of it," she said. "The betrayal. It's not in your eyes anymore." I thought about that, about what it took to get here. I hadn't forgotten, but I had released it. Because healing isn't about erasing what happened. It's about choosing not to live inside it. There are no heroes in my story. Just people, choices, and consequences. But if there's a lesson, it's this. Never give your whole self to someone who hasn't proven they know how to hold it. Never let love blind you to imbalance, and never assume quiet means weak. In the end, I lost a wife. But I gained myself. And that balance sheet finally made sense.